In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at how we can create this Pokemon Pokedex app in SwiftUI using MVVM, and it's going to look like this. So as you can see, as soon as the app loads, we're going to have this whole list of Pokemon in a grid view, and you can scroll through it to look for the Pokemon of your choice. Otherwise, if you're looking for a Pokemon that's very specific, of course you can use the search bar, and let's pretend we're looking for a Pikachu. Just type in Pikachu and tap on Pikachu, and it's going to load the API data for Pikachu. And in this simple application, we're just going to get the weight and the height. But of course, you can use the other JSON data to show the stats and the items and so on. So it can look like a real Pokedex. But if we go back, it's going to go back to this grid view with only Pikachu selected. And each time you click on backspace, it's going to provide a really nice animation for the grid view. So once again, you can scroll through it and you can pick any Pokemon you want, such as Vulpix, and it's going to show the details for that Pokemon. So it's a very simple application, and it's actually really nice because we're going to use multiple API requests, and we're going to use MVVM, and we're going to use a lot of neat stuff that you can transfer to your workplace. But to get started, we want to go ahead and create a new, fresh, empty Xcode project. And the first thing we have to do is hold down Command Option plus End to create a new group, and this is going to be for the data, and this is the data that's going to be inside our application at all times. And inside here, hold Command plus N, and we're going to create something called a Pokemon JSON. But to create a JSON file, we have to go ahead and search for something called empty, and you want to go in the other section and click on empty. Click on enter, and here type in pokemon.json. And this will create a file that's compatible with JSON. It's like a normal JSON file. Now, the reason we're going to do this is because the starting JSON is always going to be the same. It's not going to update at all. So we're just going to call this API once, and we're going to store the results in this JSON file. So we don't have to waste time with making so many API requests to one single place. So let's go to our browser, and we're just going to use this API, which I'm going to leave in the description box down below, so you can just copy and paste that in. Tap on enter, and you should get a response of JSON for the first 151 Pokemon. And we need to turn this into something that we can copy and paste. So I'm going to go to non-elaborated data and click on format. And this is something that's available in Firefox. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to some website to format it so that you can copy this and easily paste it inside this JSON file. But as you can see with this JSON response, we're going to always have the same data, which is the Pokemon name and URL for each Pokemon. And we don't have to call this more than once because, again, the data is never going to change, so it's easy to just have it in one simple file. Next, we want to go ahead and create another folder, so Command Option plus N, and this is going to be called Helpers. And we can just drag that above here, just above the content view. And inside this Helpers folder, we're going to go ahead and hold Command plus N, and we're going to click on Swift File, and we're going to name it Helpers. So Helpers is just going to be a place to put all of our helper functions that can simplify the life of our application. And for our example, we're just going to create an extension on bundle, and this is going to be used to decode static JSON data and also the one that's live from the internet. So it's just going to make it a lot easier to reuse these functions in case we want to handle multiple JSON requests. So the first one we need to create is one called decode, which is going to be generic over decodable, and it's going to require a file such as the Pokemon JSON file of type string, and it's going to return to us the data from that file. So first we need to go ahead and guard let URL, which is going to equal self.url for resource with extension. And we're going to insert the resource, which is a file, and the extension is going to be set to nil. Else, we're going to throw a fatal error that the program just can't find this file. So could not find /file in bundle, which is our entire application over here. So if this is missing, the application shouldn't work, and there's no reason it should be missing, so fatal error is appropriate. Then we need to go ahead and call guard let data, because we want to try to fetch the data from this, and it's going to take the data from the contents of the URL. And if that fails, we're going to go ahead and type in fatal error once again, could not load /file from the bundle. Then let's go ahead and specify the decoder, which is going to equal a JSON decoder. And we're going to guard let loaded data equal try decoder.decode, and it's going to take t self, which is the type itself, from the data. Else, it's going to throw a fatal error that says could not decode \file from the bundle. And if all of that goes good, of course, we can go ahead and return the loaded data. And of course, Xcode is not happy because this apparently is not inside the parentheses. So just insert it inside there in case you copied it like that, and the error will go away. Right below that function, we're going to go ahead and create another function called fetchData. And this is going to be in charge of fetching the live data from the API. So here we can go ahead and type in of type t, which will be decodable because we also want this to be generic. And it's going to take a URL of type string, a model of t.type, and a completion listener, which is going to be at escaping, and it's going to take a type which will return whatever that type is. And we're also going to call a failure listener, which is going to be at escaping, and it's going to do exactly the same thing, except it's going to use an error instead. So it's going to return an error to us. Then we can open these brackets, and inside here we can actually add some code so we can get that data. And it's going to be very similar to the JSON data decoder up here, except of course it's going to decode live data. So the first thing we want to do inside here is guardlet URL, which is going to equal a URL from the string of URL. And if that fails, we're just going to return because the URL for some reason is not valid. But if it's a good URL that actually has some data, we can go ahead and type in URL session.shared data task with the URL, which of course is going to return to us as always some data, a response, and an error in the following code, which is guardlet data equal data else return. But we're going to extend that, and if let error equal error, then we're just going to call our failure listener. So failure, which is going to have the error inserted. Otherwise, we're going to continue with a do catch block. So inside here, we can go ahead and say let server data equal try JSON decoder dot decode t.self, which is the type itself, from the data. And we're going to return it inside the completion. So inside here, we're just going to return the server data. And if that goes wrong, we can go ahead and return the failure listener, which will just return the error. And finally, on the URL session, we need to make sure to call .resume. So as you can see now, we've created two different kinds of decodable functions. The first one just decodes JSON, and the second one fetches the data and also decodes the JSON. But they are both extensions on bundle, so we can later call them on any kind of file we want in a generic fashion, which maximizes the reusability of the functions themselves. Up next, we need to go ahead and create a new folder, and this is going to take care of the models. So we're just going to drag that above the data, and inside here create a new file, which is going to be a Swift file, and it's going to be called Pokemon model, and click on create. Now the data we need to take care of is first the Pokemon page. So Pokemon page, which is going to be of codable, and it's going to have a count of type int. It's going to have something called next in case you want to try pagination. And it's going to have something called results, which, to be quite honest, is all we care about for the moment. And that's going to be an array of Pokemon. But of course we need to create that. So struct Pokemon, which is going to conform to codable, identifiable, and equatable, so we can compare them in case we want to. So first, let's go ahead and create an ID. Let ID equal UUID. Then we need to go ahead and get the Pokemon name, which is going to be of type string, and let the URL also be a type of string. And in case you're curious about where I'm getting all of this from, if you go to the Pokemon JSON file, you'll notice that the first struct is going to contain count, next, previous, and results, and each Pokemon is going to have a name and a URL. So the Pokemon model is exactly a representation of that data. So these variable names have to be exactly the same as from the Pokemon JSON. And it's always good to have some sample data. So here we're going to type in static var sample Pokemon, and that's going to equal a Pokemon with the name of Bulbasaur. And we also need a URL that will lead to this Pokemon. So go to the JSON file and just copy the first one. and insert it as the URL. Now, finally, when you click on this link, you're also going to get a bunch of data, and we're going to simplify this by creating a struct calling detail Pokemon, which will conform to codable. And what we're going to take from that is first the ID of the Pokemon, which is going to be an int. We want to get the height of the Pokemon, and we want to get the weight of the Pokemon, which will also be of type int. And in case you're curious about what data you can get back, just go ahead and copy this link here and paste it inside your browser. Then you'll notice you'll get all of this data, and we can of course open that and format it, and you'll see that there'll be abilities and that, and some base experience and so on. There's going to be plenty of data for you to work with, or it's easier if you just have it in JSON format so you can explore it like this. So forms, you can see inside here, there's some links there. There's also some stats in case you're curious about that. The base stat is 45. Whatever data you want to get from there, you can search through this API and follow the similar pattern of creating the data model. But to keep this tutorial simple, we're just going to take this data from that API. Okay, so we've modeled the data now, and now we actually have to go ahead and create some form of communication for the UI to actually grab this information. And that's where the ViewModel comes in. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and create another folder. So to do this, we have to go ahead and create another folder, which is going to be called ViewModels. And that can go right above the models. And inside the ViewModels, we're going to create a file called ViewModel. So click on Next and type in ViewModel. Now inside here, we need to go ahead and import SwiftUI. And then we need to go ahead and create a final class called ViewModel, which will conform to the observable object protocol. And I absolutely forgot, but we need to go ahead and create another folder before this, which is going to be called Managers, because we want something that's going to manage the Pokemon data. And inside this folder, we will create a Swift file, which will be called Pokemon Manager. So the Pokemon Manager is just going to make it a lot easier for us to retrieve the data in the ViewModel. We want to make it a bit easier for us to see how it works, and this is going to take care of decoding that data and returning it into a format that we can understand it. So here we're going to create a class called Pokemon Manager, and it's going to have a function called getPokemon, which is going to be the first function, and it's going to return to us an array of Pokemon. And to do this, first we need to go ahead and type in let data of type Pokemon page equal the bundle.main.decode, which we've created, and we need to insert the Pokemon.json file. And we want to create an array of Pokemon, so let Pokemon of type array of Pokemon equal the data.results. And then we can go ahead and return the Pokemon. And that's all we have to do to read the initial state of the Pokemon JSON. Now, if we want to get the details for each Pokemon, we need to go ahead and create getDetailedPokemon, which is going to take an ID of the Pokemon, and it's also going to take a completion listener, which will be @escaping, and it's going to return to us a detailed Pokemon, but we also have to add some code inside here. So we're going to go ahead and call bundle.main.fetchData, and we're going to fill out this information. So for the URL, we're just going to have to copy the same thing we had from earlier with Bulbasaur. So create a string, paste it inside, and we're going to change this one to \ID. Then we need to take care of the decodable protocol, and for this we're going to go ahead and insert detailed Pokemon.self as the data model for the information we'll get back. Then for the completion and the failure listener, we can delete that and create a closure. So here we're going to go ahead and type in data in, and we're going to return a completion with the data. And there's also going to be a failure. So it's going to return to us an error. And in this example, we're just going to go ahead and print the error. So this will take care of getting the data for the Pokemon, and it will print an error if something goes wrong. So with this being put into place, we can go back to our ViewModel. And inside here, we're going to go ahead and type in private let Pokemon Manager equal a Pokemon Manager. And we're going to be able to test out the functionality very soon. We're almost done with all of the backend parts of the application, and soon we can just work with the UI. So here we need to go ahead and create 3 published variables. And the first one's going to be a list of Pokemon, which is going to equal an empty array of the Pokemon initially, just like that. Then we're going to create another @published var of Pokemon details, which will be the current Pokemon details. And that's going to be potentially nil. Then we need to go ahead and type in published var search text. And that's going to equal nothing initially, because we also want to include a search bar since there are so many Pokemon, and chances are, if you want to look at the stats for a single Pokemon, you don't really want to scroll in alphabetical order, but you want to be able to type the name directly. So the very first thing I want to take care of, and I just want to get this out of the way, is the filter function. And it's actually going to be a computed property. So filtered Pokemon, which is going to be of type array of Pokemon, is going to be the following. What we want to do inside here is return if the search text is equal to nothing, the Pokemon list itself. Nothing's going to be filtered, it's just going to return the Pokemon list. Otherwise, we're going to return the Pokemon list dot filter, and we're going to map this out. So create a pair of curly brackets, and inside here we're going to add the $sign with a 0 dot name dot contains, and here we're going to type in search text, or let's get rid of the where, search text dot lowercase, and that will take care of the filtered Pokemon list. Now let's actually go ahead and get started with testing. We want to make sure that the Pokemon JSON is actually getting loaded. So inside here we can go ahead and create an initializer. And this initializer is going to have a self.Pokemon list, which is going to equal the Pokemon manager.getPokemon. And just for simplicity, we can go ahead and print self.Pokemon list to see what was loaded inside there. But to make sure that this actually loads, we need to go to our content view. And inside here, we need to create a reference. So at state object var ViewModel, which will equal the ViewModel. And we need to instantiate that. So remember to add the parentheses. Then we can go ahead and test this application by running it, and we'll see in the logs whether the JSON data loaded or not. And immediately you'll notice that we'll have all of this JSON data loaded immediately. We don't have to wait for any response from the server because we have it directly in our application. And again, it's always going to be the same, so that's why it's so important that we cache it locally. But now that that works, we can go back to the view model, and inside here, we're going to remove the print statement because it was just for debugging and we just wanted to verify that it worked. But otherwise, it's just going to clutter the console. Now, there's actually very little we have to do inside here. We just need to get the Pokemon index and get the details for the Pokemon. So to do this, we're going to first start with the first function, which is get Pokemon index, and this is going to require a Pokemon of type Pokemon, and it's going to return to us an integer. So inside here we're going to write if let index equal self.Pokemon list dot first index of Pokemon, and if we can find it, we're going to return the index plus 1, because that's how you get the ID of the Pokemon. And actually it would be much more fitting to call this get Pokemon ID instead, because we are returning the ID and not the index. But for this tutorial, we're going to leave it like that because that's how I wrote it earlier, and I don't want to break the code while I'm making this lesson. And if we can't find anything, we're just going to return 0. Next, we can go ahead and create a function called getDetails, and this will be the way we get the details for each Pokemon. So here we'll type in, it requires a Pokemon of type Pokemon, and inside we want to let the ID equal the get Pokemon index for the Pokemon that we insert. And self.Pokemon details is going to equal a detail Pokemon with the following ID, height, and weight. And we're just going to insert 0 for each one of those as placeholder. So we reset it to 0. And we're going to call the Pokemon manager dot get detailed Pokemon for the ID of the ID, and the completion is going to be passed in as a closure. So data in and self.Pokemon details is going to equal the data. And we actually have to update this on the main thread. So we're going to go ahead and call dispatchQ.main.async. And we're going to pass in this line of code so that we make sure it's updated on the main thread. And there's actually one last function we have to create in here, and this is a way of formatting the height and the weight, because the response we get from the JSON is unformatted height and weight, and it's kind of illegible if you don't format it. So here we're going to go ahead and type in format height weight, and we're going to take a value for this of type int, and we're going to return a string. So this is a great place to convert it to meters or to feet, depending on your local system. So just add what kind of processing you want inside here. But for this example, we're going to go ahead and let the double value of this equal a double of the value that we pass inside. And then we're going to let the string equal a string, which will be formatted in the following way. So we want to have only 2% signs. So .2f, that's 2 decimal places. And then we're going to go ahead and add the d value divided by 10. And then we have to go ahead and return the string that we've created. So this is a very simple helper function. And it actually might make more sense to put this in the helpers section. But for this example, we're just going to leave it as is. So now we have a fully functional view model that can change the data of the UI, and it's not going to be cluttered inside the UI directly, so that's great. It's going to be clean, and that's what we want. Next, we're going to have to go ahead and create one more folder, and this is going to hold the views. So go ahead and create a folder and type in views and drag the content view inside there. Now, just to make sure everything's working correctly, go ahead and run your application. And if it says hello world, you're doing great. Everything's going perfectly, and we can continue with finishing this application. So inside the content view, you should only have a text box at the moment. And we want to go ahead and change that to be a VStack so we can embed that in a navigation view. And we're just doing this now so that we can go ahead and insert an environment object. And the environment object is going to be the view model, because we want to take some of the data from here and insert it in some other views that are related to the content view. All right, with all of this being put into place, we can go ahead and create a new view. And this one's going to be called the Pokemon Detail View. So go ahead and create a new SwiftUI view, and we're going to call it Pokemon Detail View, and click on Create. And the first thing we have to do inside here is talk with the environment and say that we want to get the environment object of the view model. And we don't need to initialize it here because it already exists and we just want to refer to it. Then we need to go ahead and also specify a Pokemon that should be passed into the detail view. So let Pokemon be of type Pokemon. And immediately the compiler is going to say, hey, you need to go ahead and provide these things or else it's not going to work. So we're going to go ahead and provide the Pokemon.samplePokemon. And we need to also provide the environment object, which is going to be an instance of ViewModel. Then inside the body, we're going to go ahead and create a VStack. And it's going to take a Pokemon view, which we've not created just yet. So we can go ahead and comment that out. And it's also going to take another VStack with the spacing of 10. And this is going to contain all of the information for the Pokemon, such as the Pokemon ID, which is going to be set to \vm.PokemonDetails.id. And it's going to be potentially nil, so we're going to also have to back it up by adding a 0. And let's minimize this a bit. And we can copy and paste this 2 times. So 1, 2, and I'm going to close the sidebar because this is going to get quite big. And here we need to go ahead and change this to the weight and to the height. Then inside here, we want to provide the weight in kilos. So we're going to remove this and type in vm.format, height and width. And it's going to also be vm.PokemonDetails.weight. And if that is nil for some reason, we're going to return 0. And at the end of that, we want to return kg. And it actually might have just been simpler to copy this and put this here and change this to height. And inside here, just change this to height and put centimeters, or actually meters here. So as you can see in the display, we have the ID of 0, the weight of 0.00 kilograms, and the height of 0 meters. And we also need to go ahead and call .onAppear, because here we want to make sure that we get the details for the Pokemon. So vm.getDetails for the Pokemon of the Pokemon that we pass inside. Then let's go ahead and create the Pokemon view so we can actually see a Bulbasaur appear on the screen. So open the sidebar, click on views, click on Command N, create a new SwiftUI view and call it Pokemon view. And we can go to Pokemon Detail View and uncomment this so it actually appears there. And right now it will just say hello world. Don't worry about that. We're going to fix that right now in the Pokemon view. So inside here, we need to do the same thing as we did for detail and create an environment object, which will be a variable of ViewModel, and that will just be the ViewModel that we had initially. Then let Pokemon be of type Pokemon, and let the dimensions be of a double, which will be equal to 140. And this will help us easily edit the dimensions of the Pokemon frame, so we can just edit it in one spot instead of having to do it multiple times throughout the body. So here we need to go ahead and specify a Pokemon of Pokemon.samplePokemon, and we need to go ahead and provide an environment object, which will just be the instance of the ViewModel. And now you're going to notice that your code will not compile, and that is because in the detail view, we need to go ahead and provide a Pokemon, which is simply going to be the Pokemon that we passed inside. So back to the Pokemon view, we can actually get started with adding the actual image. So first we want to go ahead and create a VStack, and the VStack is going to hold an async image with the URL of URL, and this is going to be a URL that holds all of the image strings of the Pokemon. And to get this one here, we're going to go ahead and click on our data folder, open the Pokemon JSON, and go ahead and copy any link you want, paste it inside. It will take you to the detail page and click on sprites. And you're going to find something called a front default. So just go ahead and tap on that. And it's going to open a new window with a small Pokemon such as Bulbasaur with this URL. So go ahead and copy that URL and go to the Pokemon view. And we're going to be using that string inside here. So what you will notice immediately is that it has a 1 at the end before PNG, and that is the Pokemon ID. So for this, we're going to have to go ahead and interpolate, remove that 1, and call ViewModel.getPokemonIndex for the Pokemon of Pokemon.png. So it's going to return to us the ID of the Pokemon, which will return to us the ID of the image. Now there's actually going to be quite a bit of code inside here, so go ahead and close the sidebar, and we're going to have to see what happens if we get an image back. So if image in, and we need to go ahead and type in if let image equal image, then we're going to go ahead and use that image. So we want to go ahead and first make this image resizable, so resizable. Then we want to make it scaled to fit. And we want to give it a frame of dimensions and dimensions. And we don't care about the alignment, so let's go ahead and remove that. Now, while we're still inside the async image, we need to go ahead and also provide a placeholder. And the placeholder is just going to be a progress view. And it's going to fill up the empty space with a frame of dimensions and dimensions. So go ahead and just copy this part right here and paste it on the progress view. Then we want to go ahead and give it a background of .thin material and give it a clip shape of circle. So now we have a very nice background with a progress view, and you can actually test it out right now by clicking on play. And it's going to give us a question mark, and that just shows us that everything's working perfectly. If it cannot find the index of the Pokemon, you're going to get this very Pokemon-ish question mark, and that looks great in my opinion. But the last thing we have to do inside here is actually go ahead and right under the async image, provide a text field, which is going to be \Pokemon.name.capitalized. And we're going to go ahead and provide a font of .system, and we're going to provide all of these parameters. So the size will be 16, the weight will be regular, and the font design is going to be set to monospaced. And we need to provide some padding on the bottom. So it will be .bottom with 20 pixels. And just like that, if we go ahead and open the sidebar and go back to our Pokemon detail view, you're going to notice that we're going to have the Pokemon there as well. And if we click on play, the same thing's going to happen. It's going to load the question mark because this is not live yet. But if we go ahead and close that, we can go ahead and finally get started with finishing this app in the content view. So let's go ahead and close the sidebar. And the first thing we have to do inside here is create private let adaptive columns, because we're creating a grid view, and that requires that we create some columns. And it's going to equal an array of grid item, which we'll just pass inside here, grid item dot adaptive with the minimum set to 150. And this is great because if the user decides to use this app in landscape mode, you're going to see the Pokemon rows expand. Next, go down to the body, and inside here, we're going to first insert a scroll view. And inside the scroll view, we need to go ahead and create a lazy V-grid with the columns set to adaptive columns. and the spacing will be set to 10. Then for each of the vm.filtered Pokemon, so we can use the search view, we're going to return a Pokemon in, and we're going to have a navigation link for each Pokemon, with the destination set to Pokemon detail view, with the Pokemon inserted. And then let's open this up, because we need to pass in the Pokemon view. And here we're going to type in the Pokemon is going to be set to the Pokemon. So now, as you can see, we have a lot of Pokemon slowly loading, and if we click on run, they're actually going to load into the application. And they're also going to be interactive, so you can click on Beedrill and it will take us to the Beedrill screen. But we're missing a few things, such as the title and some other minor details, such as the search bar and the animation. So right below the lazy V grid, we're going to go ahead and get started with the animation, which is going to be a ease in, ease out, with the duration of 0.3. And the value is going to be set to the vm.filteredPokemon.count. So each time this number changes, it's going to trigger the animation on the screen. Then we're going to get a navigation title of Pokemon UI, and that can be any title you want, of course. And finally, the navigation bar title display mode is going to be set to inline. So it's just small at the center up here. We don't really care about how big the title is because this is a Pokedex, so we're going to keep it rather small. And finally, we need to provide the searchable keyword. And the text is going to be bound to the search text, which is actually part of the ViewModel, so vm.search text. And that's going to take care of the entire functionality of this app. We can actually go ahead and run the application, and if all goes well, we'll be able to search for Pokemon, click on Pokemon, and make data requests for specific Pokemon. So as you can see, we've loaded all of the Pokemon successfully on the iPhone, and we can scroll down and you'll see plenty of Pokemon inside our application. And if you click on Diglett, it's going to take us to Diglett, as you can see over here. Otherwise, we can go down and click on Weeping Bell, and it will show us the ID, the weight, and the height. And finally, the last feature that we actually want to see work is the search bar. So here, as you can see, now we have a search bar, and we can pretend we want to search for Pikachu. Let's continue here, and let's close that. We can just go ahead and type in Pikachu, and it will find Pikachu just for us. And maybe we don't want Pikachu, but we want Articuno. So it will appear as soon as we type it in the box up here. And we can tap on it and it will show us the Pokemon. But something else to note is that when you click backspace or you add another letter, it's going to animate this view here. So the user is going to think this is really, really cool. But anyways, guys, that's actually all I wanted to cover in this tutorial. Feel more than free to leave some questions in the comment section down below in case you have any. Otherwise, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.